It is. Yep. So, trying to see. So we have Monica, Raj, Peter, and Brad. So I believe we have a quorum, right? Dan? Right there.
Yes, we do.
Oh, yep. There's one more. Okay, good.
Hey, everybody.
Hi. So we definitely have a quorum. So,
Yeah, looks like it.
okay, all right. So it is 6:03 on May 20th, and we're starting the Planning Commission meeting. So would the secretary please take the roll?
Absolutely. Good evening, commissioners. Commissioner Hardy. Are you
Brad
present?
Hardy present.
Commissioner Kreiner.
Present.
Commissioner Sodi Lane. Commissioners, yep,
Present.
thank you. Commissioner McKenzie. Commissioner Vang.
Here.
Commissioner Diaz.
Present.
And Chair Bray.
Here. Okay, so now we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and Commissioner Diaz, would you lead us in that, please? We're going to, yeah, you just stand up and say, ready? Salute. Everybody stand up.
Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag of the United
States
States
of
of
America
America and to the republic
For which it
for which it
stands,
stands, one nation, under God,
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all. So,
Thank you. So I'm going to read the procedures. While emergency order number 2020-12 is in effect, City of Fresno public meetings will be conducted electronically and telephonically only. As such, this meeting is being conducted electronically and telephonically. The public may participate in tonight's meeting by using the Zoom link or calling the phone number provided on the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that all participants will be on mute until they are called upon by the chair, at which point they will be unmuted. If you are a member of the public and like to comment on an item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom, or if you are calling in, dial *9. To avoid confusion, please wait for the item you desire to comment on to be called by the chair before electronically raising your hand or dialing *9. For each matter considered by the commission, there will be a staff presentation followed by a presentation from the project applicant. Testimony from supporters of the project will then be taken, followed by testimony from those in opposition. The applicant will have the right to a final rebuttal presentation prior to closing the public hearing. In accordance with Section 13 of Article 2 of the Planning Commission Rules and Regulations governing the length of debate, all public testimony from those in support and in opposition of the project will be limited to 3 minutes per person. And I don't believe we have a bell, so this time you'll probably be muted at the end of your 3 minutes. Any testimony that references race, religion, ethnicity, economic status, national origin, or any other classification protected under state or federal law in a derogatory manner shall be deemed irrelevant and will not be considered by the commission in making its land use determinations. If you challenge these land use matters in court, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised in oral and written testimony or before the close of the hearing. So we'll start today with the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, Chair Bray, we have received a request from the applicant to continue item 7A under continued matters
Okay.
to the next Planning Commission meeting. That's for tract 5434.
That was the one we continued already.
Correct. So
Okay.
the first request came from staff, and this time the applicant has requested one more
Okay.
continuation.
Okay. Do any of the commissioners have any changes to the agenda? Okay. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay, there's a motion by Commissioner Vang. Is there a second?
Second,
I didn't see who that was.
Raj.
Okay, so there's a second by Commissioner Sodi Lane. So we'll take a vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oh, do I have to have the secretary take the vote on that too?
Yes.
I think
all
I do.
votes must be taken by roll.
Yeah. So can we have the secretary take a vote on approval of the agenda?
Yes. So on a motion by Commissioner Vang, seconded by Commissioner Sodi Lane, Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
Commissioner Kreiner,
Yes.
Commissioner Sodi Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Vang,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz, Commissioner Diaz, I think your mic is muted.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I see that Commissioner McKenzie has joined us now. So can we please note that she is here?
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
Chair Bray, your vote for the agenda?
Yes, yes. Okay. Do we have any reports by commissioners?
No for me.
None
Okay.
for me.
Okay. So the continued matter has been continued again. So we're going to go on to first item A, which is a hearing to consider, it's ID 20-00612, hearing to consider general plan text amendment application number P20-01529 and the related environmental finding. So can I have the city staff please present this item?
Yes. Good evening, Chair Bray and members of the commission. I'm Sophia Pagalatas, and this is my first formal Zoom Planning Commission meeting. So bear with me as I try to adjust. So this item is a minor technical change that removes an old date reference in the noise and safety element of the general plan. And by so doing, makes the city eligible for some matching disaster mitigation funds. So that is the purpose of the amendment. We didn't create a PowerPoint or anything. We felt it was fairly simple, but open to any questions you might have.
Okay, so we don't have an applicant in this case. It's you asking to do this.
This is correct.
Is there any public comment on this request?
Yes, there was a letter that we received today from the Leadership Council for Justice and Accountability, and I am not sure that it got to you on time. Did you receive that letter?
No, I
No,
didn't
you
get it.
did not. Okay, I have the letter here with me, and I could try to screen share it.
How long is it?
It is, let me look at it.
I mean, could you just read it?
I can do that. Here it is. It is 2 pages long. So I'd be happy to read it to you. Is that agreeable to the commission then?
I think so, yes.
Okay.
is.
Okay, it is addressed to Council President Miguel Arias, related to the agenda item 20-00622 on the council agenda for tomorrow, and Government Code 65302 Climate Adaptation and Resiliency Planning Requirements. And it says, Dear Council President Arias and fellow council members, On May 21st, 2020, the council will consider approving the agenda item ID 20-00622 to revise the local hazard mitigation section of the noise and safety element in the general plan. With this revision, the city is responsible to also develop and adopt climate adaptation and resiliency strategies in accordance with the Government Code, Section 65302, subsection G. Enacted in 2015, this law requires that cities and counties update their general plan safety elements to address climate change impacts, adaptation and resiliency strategies applicable upon the next revision of the local government's local hazard mitigation plan on or after January 1st of 2017. Some of the specific requirements of this update to the safety element include the incorporation of, and then there are several bullet points. First, a vulnerability assessment that identifies the risks that climate change poses to the local jurisdiction and the geographic areas at risk from climate change impacts. 2, relevant information available from federal, state, regional, and local agencies, including, among other things, the assets, resources, and populations that will be sensitive to various climate change exposures. 3, adaptation and resilience goals, policies, and objectives for the protection of the community. 4, feasible implementation, mitigation measures designed to carry out the goals, policies, objectives, including but not limited to feasible methods to avoid or minimize climate change impacts associated with new uses of land, and the designation of adequate and feasible infrastructure located in an at-risk area. Those are the end of the bullet points. In revising the safety element to comply with Government Code Section 65302, subsection G, a local government must consider the advice provided in the Office of Planning and Research's General Plan guidelines. The city's present revision of its local hazard mitigation plan, therefore, presents the city of Fresno the tremendous opportunity and obligation to update and develop innovative community-driven plan to comprehensively address current and future climate change threats. For decades, we have seen the impacts of climate change on communities and neighborhoods in Fresno. Longer summers, extreme heat, and prolonged droughts have hit Fresno hard and will only worsen. Furthermore, we know climate change impacts affect low-income communities the most severely. As a result, a failure by the city to comply with Section 65302 sub G will disproportionately adversely impact residents of protected classes based on race, national origin, and primary language in conflict with state and federal civil rights and fair housing law, e.g. Government Code 129551, 8899, and 12162B. These same populations experience disproportionate impacts as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Complying with Section 65302's requirements will assist the city in appropriately responding to future disasters and emergencies associated with climate change in a manner that ensures protection and safety of all Fresno residents. We ask that the city of Fresno respond to this letter to state how it intends to ensure its timely compliance with 65302G. Please contact me if you have any questions about or would like to find a time to discuss the contents. And that is signed sincerely, Grecia Elenes of the Leadership Council.
Okay.
So I can.
Do we have any questions for Sophia on that? Well, if no one else does, I do. So it sounds from that letter like there's more work that needs to be done on this in order for this to happen. I'm not certain.
Yes. So the letter is saying that the adoption of the city's local hazard mitigation plan triggers a climate action plan. The item that you have before you tonight is just the amendment of our noise and safety element of the general plan. The city's latest local hazard mitigation plan was adopted. The county took the lead and the city was one of the participating agencies, and that was adopted last January. So the city definitely has it in its list of things to do to update this the climate action plan. And I believe it has to be adopted by 2022. So that's,
So does that leadership council not know that you've already are working on that? I mean, could it be as simple as us asking you to just let them know that you're already working on that?
yeah, I would say it's in our queue. I wouldn't say that we're actively working on it, but we are very well aware that it needs to be done, and we think it's an important, step that needs to be taken.
So approving this just on the noise and part of this would not keep you from doing what they've asked you to do.
No. The main motivation was to help qualify the city to receive some local match funds for disaster mitigation.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Commissioner McKenzie.
So when did we learn about the opportunity for the disaster relief funds?
I am not sure about that. It probably came to our department, probably, I'm actually not sure.
Sometime in the last month, probably. I mean, that's when we're all learning about those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it was probably brought to our attention even before that. I'd have to look.
Okay. And so at issue is we wouldn't be able to address the things that Leadership Council is looking to have addressed in time to be able to have the amendment done to qualify for this other fund, the disaster relief funds. What's the time frame to have that done?
I am not sure about that either. I'm not sure. Talia, I know you're on the call here. Are you aware of timing with relation to that?
Good evening, Commission, and Commissioner McKenzie. Can you hear me okay? Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I just want to make sure I understand your question as far as, are you asking as far as timing for eligibility of funding or timing to prepare the climate adaptation documents?
I'm actually asking on both. So, I mean, if I understand correctly, this is being presented and you're wanting it to be approved now because there wouldn't be time to address these other issues as part of the amendment and still qualify for this disaster relief funding.
Okay, I can help untangle some of those statutory requirements and timing, and then I would defer to the policymakers for as far as when to decide certain things. But I will say this, that the revision that is, or the general plan amendment that is before this commission for recommendation today was requested of the city by the State Office of Emergency Services. This is referencing the removal of the prior date of adoption of the county's previous multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan, and the State Office of Emergency Services said that retention of that date prevented the city from being compliant with AB 2140, which allows the city to be eligible for a certain percentage of disaster mitigation funding. So this particular date is in a section of what we call non-binding narrative in the general plan. It's background information. The State Office of Emergency Services asked us to remove that date so that the reference to the county's multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan is more general and non-date specific, and will cross-reference whatever the county's current plan is. The government code section referenced in the Leadership Council letter references a requirement in the government code for the city to update its safety element to accommodate certain climate analyses and mitigation as it relates to amending a local hazard mitigation plan. So they are related actions, but they don't really happen simultaneously. This action before you today is not proposing to amend a hazard mitigation plan at all. What it's proposing to do is just strike that outdated date reference. However, I would say that, my recollection is this is also referenced in a leadership council, is that development of the climate adaptation strategies would most likely be a public process. So it would involve public outreach, public input, drafting of particular plans. They would go through a hearing process. So that would be a larger, more robust update than what this commission is considering today. It's certainly one of a few updates that the state of California would like to see cities do for their general plans. The city is aware of the importance of this update, and it is, as Sophia said, in the queue for matters to be reviewed in detail and taken forward by the planning department. But in this particular instance, it's not really tied to this particular proposal. It would take more than a couple of weeks, I will say, to prepare the changes that the government code asks for. It's a more involved planning process. There is no expiration on when the city can become AB 2140 compliant in order to receive that extra funding. However, the city is not eligible for that final percentage until the state determines that we are AB 2140 compliant. They have represented to us that once we strike that date officially, they will find us compliant with that bill. Does that answer all of your questions?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you, Julia.
Hey, is there any public on the call that wants to make a comment on this?
I don't see anyone with their hands raised.
Okay, all right. Then can we have a motion on this matter, please?
I'll vote on the motion.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Secretary, can please take a roll call vote on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I have the motion by Commissioner Diaz, and I missed who made the second. Was it Commissioner Kreiner?
I think so.
Can you
Yes.
confirm? Okay, thank you. Commissioner Hardy?
Try this again. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Kreiner?
Yes.
Commissioner Sodilin?
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes.
Commissioner Vang?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
And Chair Bray?
Yes. Okay. So we'll move on to item B, which is ID 20-00418, consideration of annexation application number P 19-02239. So can we have our staff presentation, please?
Good evening, Chair Bray, Commissioners. Chris Lang from the Planning and Development Department. One moment. All right. Okay, for your consideration this evening is plan amendment and pre-zone application number P19-2237, annexation application number P19-2239, vesting tentative track map number T6234, and the related environmental assessment. Filed by, isn't this moving? There we go. Filed by Precision Engineering on behalf of Edward Finucci. The proposed track map is located on the west side of North Hayes Avenue between West Ashland and West Shields Avenue. And it's approximately 88.1 acres. As you can see, the shaded area is the proposed map. Then the proposed annexation and pre-zone area is approximately 234 acres, outlined in red. As you can see, it stretches to the north of Dakota and also a bit further west of the proposed subdivision. Here's an aerial image of the property with the annexation boundary, again outlined in red, and the map outlined in yellow. As you can see, the property is primarily comprised of rural residential and agricultural uses, as well as Fresno Metropolitan Flood Control Basin. Those are all located within the annexation boundary. You can see that property directly to the west of the boundary has been substantially developed with single-family residential, and property to the north is also in the process, or property to the north of Ashland Avenue is in the process of being developed with single-family residential, or several recently approved single-family residential maps. Here is the existing planned land use. As you can see, the subject or the property within the map boundary is planned for open space, urban neighborhood residential, medium-high residential, and low intensity residential, as well as medium. And then, so the proposed plan amendment application proposes to amend the land use from low density residential of 1.6 acres, 9.76 acres of medium-high density residential, 17.26 acres of urban neighborhood, and 5.25 acres of open space and neighborhood park, and amend those to the medium density residential. All of these all of these amendments are contained within the 88 acres for the proposed map, with the exception of 2.5 acre portion of the parcel just to the west, as shown here, and that is proposed from urban neighborhood to medium density residential. Here you can see the proposed pre-zone, which would rezone the property from the Fresno County Rural Residential to the RS3, RS5, RM2, and OS zone districts. Please note that all of these would receive the UGM suffix. And if you look at the hatched area for the subject map boundary, you'll notice that it is just proposed to be RS5/UGM, while the rest of the properties will receive the UGM and the ANX suffix, which the ANX suffix is for the rural residential annexation transition, or excuse me, the annexed rural residential transition overlay. And that permits any structures or uses which had previously been established with the county to remain or continue to the use indefinitely. So for example, if an agricultural use has already been established, then that use can continue even if it's not permitted under the base zone district within the City of Fresno zoning. And also all proposed zone districts are consistent with the general planned land use. Here's the annexation boundary. It proposes 234 acres to be annexed to the City of Fresno and detached from the Fresno County Fire Protection District and the Kings River Conservation District. This boundary was reviewed by, the city worked with Fresno County and Fresno LAFCO to determine the annexation boundary, and this is what Fresno LAFCO requested be annexed. As you can see, it has square boundaries and creates logical borders to the city. It's also consistent with the Fresno General Plan, the County of Fresno MOU, and also Cortez Knox Hertzberg. Vesting tentative tract map number T6234 proposes to subdivide the 88.1 acre property into a 486 single family residential subdivision with an overall density of approximately 5.5 dwelling units per acre. The proposed land use, again, is medium density residential, which allows 5 to 12 dwelling units per acre. And so the proposed subdivision would meet the requirements of the land use. Here you can see the open space as proposed by the applicant. Again, the plan amendment was removing 5.25 acres of open space and rezoning that to medium density residential. But the project does replace that or provide 5.25 acres of open space throughout the subdivision. Here you can see lots A, B, C, and D, which are proposed to be dedicated for public bicycle, pedestrian, and landscape purposes for a Class 1 trail. And those outlots are located to the west of the property along the PG&E, or I'm sorry, the east of the property along the PG&E transmission lines. Also, an outlot along the north side of West Dakota is required to be dedicated for a Class 1 trail as well. All other outlots within the subdivision are to be dedicated for landscape purposes. A traffic impact analysis was done and prepared for the project and found that existing conditions plus project at Bryant and Ashland and Polk and Dakota Avenues are projected to operate below the level of service D standard in the AM peak hour. This analysis also identified that a total of 9 intersections are projected to operate below that standard with the near term with project scenario. Mitigation measures determined by the City of Fresno Traffic Engineer Manager include the installation of traffic signals with dedicated left-hand turn lanes at the following intersections. Bryan and Ashland Avenues prior to the occupancy of 200 homes, Hayes and Ashland prior to the occupancy of 100 homes, Hayes and Dakota prior to the occupancy of 300 homes, Polk and Dakota prior to the occupancy of 200 homes, Hayes and Shields prior to 100 homes, and Polk and Shields prior to 400 homes. The applicant would also be required to pay impact fees, the Fresno Major Street Impact Fee, the Traffic Signal Mitigation Fee, Regional Transportation Fee. Those are also required. Additionally, the project has also been conditioned to provide a safer route to school with an asphalt path, which is 4 feet in width along the east side of Bryan Avenue from the southern project boundary along Dayton Avenue, and also to Ashland Avenue, and also along the west side of Hayes Avenue from the northern project boundary. Here you can see a map identifying the proposed or the requested traffic signals located at North Bryan, West Ashland, North Hayes and West Ashland, North Hayes and West Dakota, North Hayes and West Shields, and then North Polk and West Shields Avenues. Additionally, you can also see the blue lines identify the requested safe pedestrian travel lanes, which would again be going to the school located at the corner of Bryan and Ashland Avenues. For public responses, a neighborhood meeting was held on October 26, 2018. Meeting attendees expressed concern over the availability of water. And the project was reviewed by the Department of Public Utilities. It was determined that adequate water supply is available for the project site, subject to payment of applicable water capacity fees. Council District 1 Project Review Committee also reviewed the project and recommended approval with the condition that lots 74 to 77 be removed. Those are located along the outlot B, or provide an 8-foot high block wall. Staff made the determination, or staff did not condition the removal of the lots. However, the project is required to provide a 6-foot high block wall as a condition of approval along the outlot bordering those lots. Planning Commission notices were mailed out to the properties, and there were several there were responses from several members of the public. 2 phone calls and 2 emails were received by staff, just requesting more information on the project. 1 phone call was received that was in support of the proposed projects. 1 phone call was received in opposition, specifically regarding the boundaries of the proposed annexation. And then 1 phone call was received requesting the item to be continued at a later date. Additionally, a letter was received from the applicant appealing conditions of approval, or requesting to modify the conditions of approval from the Department of Public Works. And this letter has been provided to you, I believe yesterday, and also uploaded to the agenda site online. Staff recommends approval, or staff recommends that Planning Commission recommends approval to the City Council of the adoption of the mitigated negative declaration prepared for the EA dated March 13th, 2020 for the purposes of the proposed project. The recommended approval of Plan Amendment Application P19-2237, which proposes to amend the Fresno General Plan and the West Area General Plan from the low density residential, medium high density residential, urban neighborhood, and open space proposed land uses to the medium density residential land use designation. Also, staff recommends Planning Commission recommend approval of pre-zone application 2237, which proposes to pre-zone the property to RS3, RS5, RM2, and OS, with, again, the UGM and the annexation overlays, along with those subject properties, and the exception, of course, being the map itself, would just receive the RS5 UGM zoning. Recommend approval of annexation application P19-2239, proposing to initiate proceedings for the Dakota Hayes No. 4 reorganization, which would annex the 234-acre property to the city of Fresno. Also, detachment from the North Central Fire Protection District and the Kings River Conservation District. And recommend approval to the City Council of vesting tentative tract map 6234, proposing to subdivide the 88.1 acres of the subject property into a 486 lot single-family residential development, subject to compliance with the conditions of approval dated May 20th, 2020. And also, this would be contingent upon approval of the associated annexation, plan amendment, and rezone applications, as well as the environmental assessment. Now, I would like to turn this over to Jill Gormley with the Public Works, or the Department of Public Works.
Good evening. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. My name is Jill Gormley. I am the city traffic engineer and the traffic operations planning manager. And I wanted to just respond to the request that we got from the applicant to remove conditions of approval for traffic signals and safe routes to school that were conditioned on the project. You know, as you heard from Chris, the project is approximately almost 500 dwelling units. I think it's 477. Those 477 dwelling units are projected to add about 4,500 ADT to the surrounding roadway network. That equates to about 2,200 new vehicle trips or new vehicles on the roadways that are not currently there. The housing also has a potential to add about 500 students to local schools in the area. We've done lots of planning studies and planning efforts in the area, whether it be on individual applications, the West Area Plan, and traffic is always the #1 complaint that we get. Lack of infrastructure as far as traffic signals or sidewalks, roadway conditions. So when we're looking at traffic studies for individual projects, we are looking at these issues. There's two main categories for the conditions for the traffic based on the traffic studies. One would be the traffic signals, and the other one would be the safe routes to school. The traffic study showed that there's 6 signals conditioned in the area. 2 of those signals, Bryan and Ashland and Hayes and Ashland, are also conditions on other maps in the area. Each of those signals is conditioned on 2 other track maps. We're looking at the volumes that the project adds, the operations, pedestrian operations, and also accidents when we're looking at how we decide where we condition these traffic signals. Now, in the past, these have been CEQA mitigations effective at the end of this past year. That has been ruled that these are not CEQA mitigations any longer. That level of service is not the CEQA metric for traffic impacts. That is moving to BMT, which is not part of the study at this time. So the request that we received from the applicant was to remove the condition on 3 traffic signals and also to remove the condition for the safe routes to school. The traffic signal conditions, I believe, are in the letter that you received recently from Precision Engineering, and that would be to remove the condition to signalize the Hayes and Dakota intersection, which is required. We've conditioned that to be required after or prior to occupancy of 300 homes. That's not something that we have asked to be conditioned on day 1 of the subdivision. The Hayes and Shields intersection, that has also been conditioned. That is conditioned prior to the occupancy of 101 homes. And the Polk and Shields intersection, that has also been conditioned prior to the occupancy of 400 homes. These, like I said before, these conditions were all based on traffic signal warrants, traffic signal collisions, pedestrian activity, potential pedestrian activity with the build out of the subdivision or construction of these houses. And I'd also like to add that all of these traffic signals are included in our traffic signal mitigation impact fee program, which means that they are all reimbursable once they are built and approved by the city. And I am available to answer any questions that you may have.
Do any of the other commissioners have questions?
The applicant is available.
Okay, and also, I'm sorry to jump in. Also, staff is available to answer any other questions regarding the remainder of the presentation as well.
So if no one else has a question, I do. When we looked at that map of where the lights are being asked, the traffic signals are being asked to put in, I noticed that some of them were pretty far away from that property. I mean, they weren't adjacent to it. And I wondered, are they just asked to pay for part of the cost of the traffic signal, and some other developer who's already out there or plans to be out there is going to pay for the other part? I'm trying to understand how that works. You're muted, Chris.
Oh, go ahead, Jill, if you want to take that one.
Okay, yeah, so it depends. These conditions are put on the developers for them to pay for. And like I said, they are reimbursed. It's kind of a first person in the builds the improvements. Like I said, the Bryan and Ashland and Hayes and Ashland intersections have already been conditioned on other maps. So if those subdivisions come in and build tomorrow, they would be responsible for installing those traffic signals, and this project would not be responsible for that.
When do they get reimbursed?
They are reimbursed once the traffic signal is completely constructed, that we accept it as a city, and there is once they submit their invoices for construction, we review all that and accept it, and they are reimbursed as they come in. So if one project comes in and then the next project comes in, that first project is reimbursed first, and so on down the line as reimbursements come in.
So if they were to have to do this, they would get reimbursed for having done it in a reasonable amount of time?
Yeah, Andy, can you speak to the schedule for reimbursement? I think you're on mute.
There we go. I'm sorry, I was muted. I'm Andrew Bonelli. I'm the Assistant Public Works Director for the city. I can talk a little bit about our program. As a developer comes in, when they pull a building permit for each home, they pay that fee. And the fee's over $4,000 per home. So once they're committed to building a signal, they immediately get credit. So as they build the homes, they don't pay that fee for those homes. So they get that credit immediately. When they file their final map, they post a bond that guarantees that the signal will be built. Before they can do their final map, they also have to submit the traffic signal plans. And they submit that. Once they complete the signal, they file the paperwork, they go on a list, and we reimburse them. We would deduct any amount of credit that they had spent. So maybe they've built 100 homes, so they have credit for $400,000 or something, 40, whatever it is. So we deduct that. The rest of the money, they wait their turn as other developers come in. It's kind of a revolving fund. We've been reimbursing most of the developers within 2 years, but the market has been really good. During the recession, it took as much as 5 years at times. really depends on the amount of revenue that's generated from development. So if the housing market stays strong, they'll get reimbursed fairly soon. If development slows down, it could take as much as 5 years. But they still get reimbursed. They never lose their place. They just wait longer to be reimbursed.
Thank you. Do any other commissioners have questions for the staff?
I have a question for Chris. Hey, Chris, quick question. So even though the development itself consists of 88.1 acres, so we're looking to go ahead and annex that 234. Are we looking at, do we have any potential developments that have been submitted to the city to develop the other portions of the acres that we're trying to annex into the city?
I believe so far there has been one application submitted for a tract map along the eastern border of the annexation boundary. I believe it's just one small 7.5 acre parcel, but we have received an application for that at this point.
Okay. In regards to the communication that you receive from local residents, what's the biggest concern that they do have?
I'd say the biggest concern, again, are people within the annexation boundary. They're just concerned about, effects that would happen, negative effects from coming into the city. One gentleman, again, requested not to, was opposed to the idea of being annexed. As other people have also, indicated that other communications were more just the impacts or, what would happen, with their property if they were annexed.
I noticed that the last community meeting was in 2018, so it's been quite some time. Have we engaged a community recently in regards to this situation at all, or has 2018 been the last correspondence with the local community?
Will, do you?
No, I just noticed that the last community meeting was in 2018.
Yes.
So it's been quite some time. So my question is, is there a certain requirement that the city does have that requires within a certain time frame to re-engage in that conversation with the community, since it's been roughly maybe a year and a half or 2 years?
Commissioner Vang, Will Tackett, Planning and Development Department. So staff has had subsequent meeting with various property owners within the annexation boundary, including a couple of the property owners along Bryan. And we've also met with other development interests east of the project on the north side of the Dakota Avenue alignment. The Fresno Municipal Code, when required, requires that neighborhood meetings occur before application acceptance, which is the early date of that. The subsequent public hearings necessary for approval provide opportunity for further comment, as does the CEQA process. So there has not been another neighborhood meeting conducted, but staff has met with other interests in the area. And to clarify on the annexation boundary, staff did meet with the County of Fresno and LAFCO many times over the course of processing this application. We do have an MOU with the County of Fresno, which requires certain standards to be met for annexation. And those standards include squaring off boundaries, not creating peninsulas, and a host of other items. So in this instance, we did have some initial development interests to the east. We wanted to square those properties off, get the entirety of Dakota Avenue in. We have portions of this project that touch Bryan Avenue, while other remnant parcels are not included in the boundary. What we want to avoid is a situation where we have a portion of Bryan in the county, and then it's city, and then it's county, and then it's city again. That creates maintenance issues, it creates service issues, it creates confusion over emergency services. So all those standards are intended to really square off boundaries, make logical borders to annexation, and we base the extension of the annexation to those rural properties on Bryan, as well as those at the southeast corner, to square those boundaries off with the subdivision map, get basically complete and squared boundaries of streets in, and then accommodate what we know are future development interests to the east on the north side of Dakota.
Thank you, Will.
Are there any further questions of the staff?
I do. I have a question. I have a question for Chris. And this is in reference to the what was already mentioned about the open space and bike trails. I know that no one touched on anything that deals with new parks around the area. I would like to know more about parks, if it was something that goes along with the consistent with the general plan, or what is a plan for this development. I also heard that there's about 500 students, more students to the area. So I'm a little concerned about not listening about any parks. Can you speak a little bit about that?
I can speak somewhat to that. So again, there was a portion of property that is with the plan that was a dual designation. So it was planned for urban neighborhood residential, and also potential for a public park. There was no interest at the time of developing that as a park, and so that open space has actually been incorporated into the development itself to, again, allow for trails, bike paths along the transmission lines. If in regards to the annexation area, there also is a property on the side of Hayes, which is also dual designation for a community or a neighborhood park. And if the Parks Department, for example, determined that they did want to exercise that option to construct the park, they would be able to do so based on the dual designation of the zone district.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any further questions? Okay, so we'll go out to the applicant right now. So does the applicant have a presentation?
Hold on, let me bring Bonique in. And after Bonique, there is one person in the public with their hands up.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, for some reason our camera is not working, but let me see if I can share my screen. Can you see my screen?
No.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay, the project applicant owner is going to speak first.
Good evening, commissioners and city staff. My name is Eddie Finucci, and I'm the developer behind tract number 6234. I and my family are also the owners of this property. I am here tonight with Bonique Emerson, who is our civil engineer on the project. Also, I believe on Zoom is Jose Benavides from JLB Traffic, as well as Travis Crawford from Crawford and Bowen. They also prepared, Jose prepared the traffic study for us, and Travis did the environmental analysis on the project as well. They're also here to answer any of your questions, but Bonique has a presentation to address the specific issues that have been discussed with the traffic and our request for modifications. So I'll pass it to Bonique now.
So good evening, commissioners. This is Bonique Emerson with Precision Civil Engineering, and I'm representing the project applicant. And as mentioned before, we submitted a letter appealing several of the conditions on behalf of the applicant, and I'm just going to go through those quickly. So just you are already familiar with the project. It proposes to subdivide approximately 88.1 acres into a 486 lot single family residential development. So first, just for some context, we would like to point out that the owner does concur with the majority of the City of Fresno conditions of approval, but is appealing 5 traffic-related conditions. And of these conditions, we request that 2 of them be modified and 3 be eliminated. And it should be noted that the applicant does agree with signalizing 3 intersections, which is a substantial requirement for a subdivision of this size. So first I'm going to talk about Hayes and Dakota, we're requesting that be modified to an always stop. And so I'm just going to go through a few reasons why. First, the signalization warrant is not met. The project's fair share of the intersection improvements for this intersection is less than 21%. All relevant project impacts at the intersection can be fully mitigated with the implementation of an always stop. And the 3 collisions that were cited by the city have taken place outside the influence zone of the intersection, which is greater than 250 feet from the intersection. And as a result, signalization is not warranted. The types of collisions that occurred could be reduced with an always stop. So next is the haze and shields signalization requirement, and we're requesting to eliminate this requirement. Again, at this intersection, the signalization warrant is not met. The project's fair share of intersection improvements is less than 15%. That all relevant project impacts at this intersection are fully mitigated by the implementation of always stop controls, which this actually has been recently installed. So now that is a 4-way stop. And the existing always stop reduces collisions at this location more than signalization. Signalized intersections result in more rear-end collisions than always stops. So next is the pole and shield signalization requirement. And we're requesting to eliminate this requirement. Again, the signalization warrant is not met. The project's fair share of intersection improvements at this location is less than 3%. The City of Fresno Public Works Department did come to a different conclusion than was in the traffic impact analysis because they used a different methodology. The city elected not to reduce the right turning volumes at this intersection by 50% in their analysis. And based on JLB's 15 years of experience preparing traffic studies for the city, this is the first time that the city has rejected the approach of reducing the right turn volumes in conducting the TIA's impact analysis. And for those reasons, we think that the pole and shield signalization is not warranted. Next, I'm gonna move on to the safe route to schools. We request to eliminate one route and modify the second. So if you see on that map, in the purple is the city required safe route to school, and in the red is what we're proposing. The issue with the Hayes pathway, which is on the east side of the project area, is that it would end at Ashland, where students would have to walk an additional 2,600 feet along Ashland, where there are no sidewalks. So we didn't feel that that was providing a safe route to school. It is the most logical pathway for the most children is to come out at Bryan Avenue. And here we have an exhibit that shows the movement through the subdivision. So as you can see, this project is actually being required to improve Dakota all the way to Bryan. So it makes most sense, and it makes the most logical sense to have the pathway start at Dakota and continue north along Ashland. This area down in the southwest corner is actually a temporary ponding basin. It one day may be single family, but it'll be a temporary ponding basin for quite a while, for a number of years. So really, it's only these few homes in this location that would have to walk east and head north up this street and out to Dakota. This just makes more logical sense. You know, as a parent, you're gonna want your kids to avoid the major street if possible. So this is the most logical pathway for students to walk. And so we're not asking that the safe route to school requirement be eliminated. We're just requesting that it be modified. And some additional reasons for modifying the conditions. The improvement requirements imposed on this project are not in proportion to the scope of the project. The project is being required to expend 15 times the amount that normal traffic signal impact fees would require. And the justification used to impose these requirements is not based on secret thresholds for significant impacts. And that concludes our presentation. Again, as Eddie mentioned, Jose Benavides is also available to answer any specific technical questions about our analysis of the traffic signal requirements. And we're here to answer any other additional questions if you have any. Thank you.
Okay, do any commissioners have questions for the applicant?
I have a question. What's the, in regards to these traffic signals, what is like a general estimated cost of putting up a traffic signal?
So Jose may be able to speak to that a little bit more, but from my understanding, the cost is about, just for the signalization and improvements, is about 400,000, 300,000 to 400,000 plus. The city is asking that all of the signals be constructed to the ultimate right-of-way, which requires the acquisition of property at all four corners at most of the intersections. So the cost will, a safe approximate estimate would be about $600,000 per intersection.
Are there any other questions?
And Jose's on the line there.
So this is Jose Benavides, and thanks, Peter, for your comment regarding construction costs. The signals alone, what people see as a signal, it's probably going to cost about $325 to $350, but that's construction costs. It doesn't include soft costs like design, right-of-way acquisition, street improvements. The city's requirements for a traffic signal in order for a developer to get reimbursed is, one, to add things like left turn phasing, make sure that all the equipment is at its ultimate location so that they don't have to come back and reconstruct, which makes a lot of sense. So if we take a location like Shields at Hayes, which is completely 100% in the county, it also means that the county, if there's any right-of-way issues with non-willing sellers, it would have to go through eminent domain through the county, a different agency. So the cost for a signal, including street improvements at, for example, Shields at Hayes, usually cost anywhere from $600,000 to $800,000, and that's that particular location is not what you would determine a complicated location from a design standpoint based on existing homes. But so when we talk about the magnitude of the fees, the TSMI fee for this project being just under $250,000, but even if this developer had to do all 6 signals, we would be talking about $3.6 million potentially in that magnitude as far as construction costs. Let's say we assume that the 2 signals along Ashland are built by other developers. So now we would be talking about, what is that, 2.4 million. And I know some of these are staggered based on lots, but they have basically 2 by 100 lots, another 2 at the next 2. So it's, and just for a historical perspective, I can tell you that this is the first time that I'm testifying and disagreeing with the level of requirements on a project in the city of Fresno since 2005.
Thank you, Jose.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions of the applicant? Okay, so we'll go out to the public. Are there any members of the public who want to comment in favor of the application?
There's one hand up. I will call on them, and I do have a timer starting.
Are they in favor or opposition?
There's absolutely no way for me to tell that.
Okay, well, we'll find out.
Nick, you have 3 minutes.
Please state your name and your address, please.
Nick, can you hear us? Nick, last chance. Okay, have another person with their hand up called Holland Park West.
Hello.
You could please state your name and your address.
Yes, my name is Cal Lundeen. I am Holland Park West. Our address is 3855 North Bryan Avenue, and we're on the southwest corner of Ashland and Bryan. So I'm kind of new to this. I'm very new to Zoom, but my concerns obviously are going to be how they handle that street, the Bryan Avenue street, with the new high school that's coming up and this kind of stuff. What are the plans for the road itself? Is there going to be a widening of that road, or? I didn't hear you. Hello.
Hi, I think you can, you have 3 minutes to say your piece, and then we can ask staff if there's any questions.
Okay. Like I said, I'm new to Zoom. So yeah, I think I have concerns with what is going to happen to Bryan Avenue itself as far as the widening of the streets, worried about getting, school traffic to the school, worried about getting the kids to school with a safe route, because there are no sidewalks, or presently a lot of the kids, are on our side of the street, and they come down there in force sometimes, and when they do, they kick off the sprinklers and things like that. So I'm just concerned that they're actually going to have a designated route, especially with the high school and the Glacier Point across the street from us. Is there going to be a widening of the road, or is this going to remain the way it is? I know you talked about water a little bit. I haven't heard anything about the water. Is this surface water or groundwater that this location is going to pull from, or do we know anything about that? I'm just concerned. I mean, we are on that corner. We do a fair amount of traffic, a lot of it, or majority of it is on the weekends, but I do worry about, all the activities that go on at the schools and so on, and what kind of an impact that's going to have on us as a wedding venue. There's a fair amount of impact already as far as there's a lot of noise on weekend evenings when they have their games and so on, and that really makes it tough on us too. Plus, the school across the street plays constant music throughout the day, so when we have events, this is a big deal. Also worry about all the traffic the people that will be coming in the tracks, and how that impacts us as far as our noise levels and things like that that we'll be dealing with, and how, whether or not that keeps us safe with what we're doing, or is there going to be a problem there? That's about it for me.
So are you saying you're in opposition to the project, or you just have some comments?
I think I have a lot of comments. I could be in opposition to it based on some of the answers that come from, the questions I've asked, but I do worry about the narrowness of the street. There is some traffic out there now. I mean, sometimes it gets fairly heavy, especially when we have our larger events and so on. How that is going to fit in with what you're doing. Bryan's a pretty narrow street, and I'm not sure how you widen it without, obviously you'd have to go on the east side rather than on our side without taking out, a lot of our land in order to do it. So. And there's a jog in the street right in front of Holland Park that pushes over to the other side of the road. So, and maybe this is something that I can speak with someone even after after this is over to get some more solid answers as far as what I'm looking for.
So it sounds to me like maybe staff needs to talk with him, but does the applicant have a rebuttal for that? Monique, do you?
So in regards to some of these impacts, they were looked at in the environmental document prepared for the project, and the project has been, all impacts have been mitigated to less than significant levels where there were potential impacts. So that's addressing noise, water, we've talked about traffic. And we're proposing that safe route for children within this subdivision to the middle school.
So it sounds like maybe staff should have a conversation with the gentleman from Holland Park West to help him with his questions. So do any other commissioners have questions of the applicant or staff at this point?
We still have public asking their hands up.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
We have Nick again, and we'll give him another shot. Nick, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
All right, perfect. Thank you. Hi. Yeah, my name is Nick. I live at 3378 North Bryan. I'm one of the homes that's being asked to be annexed into the city of Fresno. I'm against this development, and I just have a few questions, if you guys don't mind. One, and on behalf of everybody else in the area, is traffic is a huge concern, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily the light signals nor the safe passage to schools, even though those are important qualities to have. The biggest concern is the traffic going from Bryan down Shaw through Polk, across the freeway, and across the railroad tracks. 400 new homes, you said, is going to add approximately 2,200 new cars each day. And then you have homes going across the new high school in Grantland. That's probably going to triple that. That's the biggest concern when it comes to traffic. Not the traffic lights, not necessarily the safe ways, but it's the traffic going to places that we need, that are necessities of working, shopping, getting across, that it causes the pollution for the climate change and everything. So for us, getting across the freeway, that's the biggest concern. So especially right there on Shaw and Polk. I feel like developers should pay for the increase of expanding the roads, and as well as, public, parks as well. I mean, if these students need to go to school, which they should, the 5.3 acres is not adequate enough to take these kids. I would say use that 5.3 acres to develop a path to the school, and don't take residential of existing people's land away just to take a sidewalk. So that's a huge concern for us. And on top of water, we have a well, and that well could dry up because of this. And with that, if once it dries up, I would assume that we would have to be annexed and pay the fee to be into the city. So that not only is that, you're putting a charge onto us to pay some sort of fee to connect to the city. So that's an unexpected cost when we could just automatically just dig a little deeper, which would be cheaper. Another concern is the just an overall Fresno general plan. We all know that urban sprawl isn't necessarily the best way to necessarily grow anymore. I see this as a pattern in Fresno, and we should be investing more in downtown areas and pushing developers to be there than to spread out into these areas that honestly don't have the ability to withhold it. Like, it's unfortunate, but I know I'm coming up on my time here. I'm highly against this in every way possible. And I know developers seem to have gotten away for the longest time in Fresno. But I mean, the last meeting you had on this was October of 2018. And I'm curious to know if we received a letter. And I'm curious to know if you guys knocked in every single door and not just every other house, because I would have been involved a lot sooner had I known this was happening. So it's, I'm just kind of curious, and all in all, how does this fall under the Fresno general plan when this is something that has a clear impact in not only the community, but the climate and everything else. So just, that's all I had to say. Kind of curious to see where everyone else stands on this development.
Thank you, Nick. Is there another applicant, member of the public with their hand up? I don't see the hand up.
Yes, there's Jose Lewis.
Thank you. This is Jose Benavides again. I just wanted to respond to the question about Brian and Ashland. Is based on the conditions of approval, and we don't disagree with those. The project is required to signalize this, and whether this project signalizes it or the Watt and Castanos projects at the northeast corner of Brian Ashland signalize it, it's going to take place in the early stages of this project. And regarding the Safe Route to School path, what we're talking about, it's going to be along the east side of Bryan. So eventually they'll have a path that does not go along the southwest corner. So I just wanted to add that.
There's no other hands up.
No other hands up, is that what you said?
That's correct. Nobody else has
Okay.
anything.
Okay, all right. Then we'll close this hearing. Do the commissioners have any questions or comments on this item?
I do. I have a very small comment, and I would like somebody to answer this. I would like to know how is it that the residents from that surrounding area that will be affected, how is it that they were able to get involved? And when was the last time that the developer or anybody reached out to the community to actually hear these concerns?
Well, we can address that. So this is Bonique Emerson. So the city does require one public meeting prior to submitting the application, and that public meeting did occur. The city requires that notices be sent out to property owners within 500 feet, which is different than the public notice for this meeting, which requires 1,000 feet. So there is a possibility that the initial noticing didn't go out to everyone who is within 1,000 feet, because the public meeting notice for the initial public meeting before application submittal only has to go out to property owners within 500 feet.
I'm sorry, Monique, maybe you could explain to me again the 1,000 feet. You said there should be a second meeting?
No, what I was saying is that the city requires that before we submit an application for a plan amendment, that we have a neighborhood meeting. And that neighborhood meeting is required, and this is in the code, it requires that you send the notices for that initial public or neighborhood meeting to property owners within 500 feet. So that's the code. And so that the notices were sent out back in 2018 before the application was submitted. But that is different than, so for this meeting, for Planning Commission, staff sends out notices, and they send out notices to property owners within 1,000 feet. So the code requires notification for 1,000 feet for the Planning Commission meeting. So what I was saying is that there is a possibility that the people who received the notice for this hearing did not receive a notice for the initial neighborhood meeting. But the applicant would be happy to meet with them if they have concerns.
And this is Eddie Finucci, the applicant. I'd also like to say I was at the public meeting that we held at the school, and there were several families that came that lived along and adjacent to the subject development on Bryan Avenue, as well as several families on Hayes Avenue as well. I'm not sure where this particular person lives, if it's within or not.
Do we have, by any chance, do you have the count or the amount of the notices? How many people they were sent out to?
For this public hearing?
Yes.
That would be Chris, the staff planner.
Yes, the notice was sent out to a 1,000-foot radius. I believe there were several hundred sent out for this meeting. And those notices went out, I believe, on May 8th.
Thank you, Chris.
Are there any other questions or comments by the planning commissioners?
I have a question, and I'm new to this, but my concern is really for community members who may feel as if they have been, their voice is not heard, and to make sure there's full transparency when it comes to what's being done. Is there a way where there is a possibility where more community members who may have not been, I mean, that was 2 years ago. So is there a way that between that 2 years and now that community members who are now in that area or may have not received the notification for some reason have an opportunity to raise questions so questions could be asked, so full transparency could be done so there is no mix-up, so everyone that is able to attend, at least you can cover your ground to say, we did make another attempt. And if people don't want to adhere to that, that's fine. But it just kind of seems like there's a gap between the last community meeting until now. And there are questions from a couple of community members who have been on that it doesn't seem like have been answered. And I'm just a firm believer, if there is one or two that have questions, there's probably double or more than those that have more questions. Yeah, that's a great point. This is Brad Hardy. I had a question for the developer. How many people attended your guys' meeting when you held it at the school? Was it one or was it a whole room full?
I wouldn't say it's a room full, but I would say it was probably 20 to 30.
And what did you get most of their questions answered? What were some of their feedbacks?
You know, the meeting was handled by city staff, and I can't recall. I can't really recall what was said or what was asked at that time.
Okay.
But I mean, at the time, all of the questions were answered, and you know, they were given contact information if they had follow-up or other questions. And I know, and I think maybe Will can address this, that some people have contacted the city and have come to meet with city staff about the project and to have some questions answered.
Oh, perfect.
So I noticed that there are 3 more people with their hands up from the public. Unfortunately, they were not up before. I had asked if there was any other comments by the public, and no one said anything at that time. So now the hearing is closed to public comment. Is that correct, Dan?
Yes, you did close the public hearing.
And those were not up before we closed the hearing. So unfortunately, I can't take those requests now. So do the commissioners have any more questions or comments?
May I say something as the applicant?
Sure.
I'm happy to provide my information, and I'm happy for anybody in the public to contact me with their questions to go over the project, and we will get their questions answered. If I don't have the answer, either the engineers or the city will get their questions answered.
Monique, this question is for Monique. I had a question in regards to the slides that you presented. You mentioned that there's the fair share in regards to those signals. How do you go about calculating your fair share?
So that comes from the traffic impact analysis. So I'll let Jose speak to that. Jose, are you there still?
Hi, this is Jose again. As far as our fair shares calculated, basically it's based on the project's traffic at that particular location divided by future traffic, including the project traffic. So it does not take into account existing traffic volumes. So for example, if the project adds 10 trips to a particular facility and the project in conjunction with other projects and just general growth in volumes is 100 between the study year and the cumulative year, so then the project would have 10% Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that does. Monique, really quickly on your slide. So there were 3 signal lights that you brought up. Which one was the one that had the 21% fair share?
That was the first signal in the presentation. That was Hayes and Dakota.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments or questions from the commissioners?
Yeah, I do have a question, and I think this is probably, well, this is for staff, and wanting to, I guess, get a staff response or understanding where the applicant presented the appeal and identifying, I think there were a couple of intersections where the warrant was not met. So I just wanted to get staff's, I guess, response to that. I don't know if what they're saying is there's a difference in terms of how the engineers were making that determination. And then also with respect to even where the warrants were met, why the recommendation is for a signal versus an always stop.
Jill Gormley, Traffic Operations and Planning. So with regards to the warrants, there are provisions in what we call the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices for using engineering judgment to reduce volumes along roadways for warrants. We disagree with the analysis that is done in the traffic impact study. We are looking mainly at 2-lane roads without turn pockets, and the reduction was made to reduce right turn volumes by 50% across the board on all warrants with no justification given. Our practice has been to not make those reductions unless there is a valid reason. Without turn pockets, without other roadway type of facilities present, we didn't see the need to make those 50% reductions on those volumes. And we looked at the warrants and the timing, and they correspond to how we laid out the conditions based on the number of homes. So where it may not be that this warrant is met today, maybe it's met in the near term or in a few years, that would be when we determine that those, say, 400 homes that we put that condition on would be a reasonable time frame to install the traffic signal. We look at the volume of traffic on the road, how things operate with always stops and how they operate with traffic signals, and we determine that the traffic signal would operate better at these locations. And that's based on the volumes and also on the number of collisions.
Thank you.
Hey, are there any more questions or comments by the commissioners? Okay. Can we get a motion, please?
I want to make a motion. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and I want to approve staff's recommendations with the modification that we remove the signalization on Hayes and Shields and Polk and Shields.
Okay. So can we get a second on that, please? So does no one want to second Commissioner Vang's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay. All right. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Yes, absolutely. So the motion is to approve staff's recommendation with 2 of the signals taken out. Commissioner Hardy?
Aye.
Commissioner Kreiner?
Aye.
Commissioner Sodilink?
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie? Commissioner McKenzie? Commissioner Ving,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Chair Bray.
Yes.
All right, 7-0.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, so now we are on to item C, consideration ID 20-00611, consideration of annexation application number P19-06018. Can we have the staff presentation?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. Chair Bray, Kathy George, Planning and Development. Tonight for your consideration is a project with 6 related applications, which include a pre-zone, a plan amendment, an annexation, a plan development, a tentative track map, and the related environmental finding. The subject property pertains to approximately 79.12 acres located on the southwest corner of East Clinton and North Armstrong Avenues. It's currently zoned in the county as indicated on the map in yellow. The entire annexation boundary is approximately 79.12 acres, but the proposed subdivision is approximately 19.12 acres, which is indicated on this aerial photograph with the red strike through. The immediate vicinity of the subject property is residential in nature and has been substantially developed with residential uses. Although currently in the county, the subject site is designated in the Fresno General Plan within the sphere of influence boundary. The parcels annexed as the, I'm sorry, let me go back. So the subject site is designated by the Fresno General Plan within the sphere of influence boundary. The parcels within the sphere of influence are annexed as development is proposed. Because it's within the sphere of influence, the subject property does have a designated planned land use, which is mainly residential medium density, but there are about 8.83 acres of residential urban neighborhood. The related pre-zone application would zone the entire annexation boundary, so the 79 acres, from Fresno County AE 20 to RS5 UGM ANX for 59.32 acres and RS5 UGM for the 19.12 acres. The parcels that are brought in with the annexation but are not being developed by this subdivision will receive the ANX for the annexed rural transition overlay, which allows rural residential uses of the properties upon annexation to the city to continue as long as they were lawfully permitted. So this is kind of a visual representation of what it will look like. So the picture on the left shows the northmost and the southmost parcels with that ANX overlay district, and the exhibit on the right shows the 2 parcels for the proposed subdivision without the ANX overlay. But essentially the entire annexation boundary will have the same base district, which is RS5 for residential medium density. The plan development component proposes the plan amendment application associated with this project would take the 8.83 acres of residential urban neighborhood and amend the Fresno General Plan and the McLean Community Plan to change that land use designation to residential medium density. So here is the entire annexation boundary. That strike through area is what's currently, which has a current plan land use designation of residential urban neighborhood, that would receive the residential medium density plan land use designation, so the entire area would be consistent. The tentative tract map proposes to subdivide the 19.12 acres into a 225 single-family residential subdivision at a density of approximately 11.3 dwelling units per acre. The project has been reviewed by several departments and is determined that it can provide adequate public utilities, fire service, access, and open space and landscaping. The plan development component proposes to modify the standards within this, which will be a private development. The modifications include decreased front and rear yard setbacks, decreased garage setback, decreased lot depth, and decreased lot sizes. So this proposal is to achieve a higher density while providing the option of home ownership with less maintenance and less water consumption. Staff received one email expressing opposition to this project, and I did forward it to each planning commissioner today. I also posted it on the clerk's website for public review, so it is on the public record. The email cited traffic impacts. This project was required to submit a traffic impact study, and it analyzed 11 different intersections for traffic impacts. In addition to paying all of the applicable fees, the project is also required to install a traffic signal at East Olive and North Armstrong, which is indicated by that star towards the southern part of the exhibit on your screen. They have to install that traffic signal at the 101st building permit pulled for the subdivision. So after they pull 100 permits, they would have to install this traffic signal. The project did hold a neighborhood meeting in January, on January 29th. It went to the ALUC, the Airport Land Use Commission. It went to the District 4 Committee, and notices were mailed out to the neighbors within a 1,000-foot radius on May 8th. To date, we only received the one email, which was forwarded to the commission. With that, it is staff's recommendation that the Planning Commission recommend approval to the City Council to adopt the mitigated negative declaration for the environmental assessment, recommend approval to the City Council of the annexation application, recommend approval to the City Council for the plan amendment application, recommend approval to the City Council for the pre-zone application, recommend approval to the City Council for the plan development, and recommend approval to the City Council for the vesting tentative tract map. Staff is available to answer any questions, and the applicant is available as well should the commission have any.
Do any commissioners have questions for staff at this time? Okay, so I'd like to invite the applicant to do their presentation.
That was George Beal. No, Stanley. Never mind.
I believe either Stanley Harbor or Dirk Puschel would like to speak on behalf of the project.
Okay.
Stanley's been invited into the room here.
Okay. Stanley, your mic is
It's
actually.
like they're muted.
There we go.
All right, sorry, thank you. Again, Dirk Puschel, land planner on behalf of Wilson Homes, the applicant. With me this evening is our engineering team and Todd Wilson and Jeff Harris, who's the chief operating officer of the company. We thank Kelsey for her work. This is a culmination of well over a year of effort. Our work with Fresno County, with LAFCO, obviously with your planning and public works staff, because this is a new growth area for the city. of course, identified in your general plan. But as Kelsey has identified for you, there's considerable urbanization that's occurring, principally from north to south, but there's also substantial growth coming from the south to the north along this area. We concur with all of the project conditions. We are about a mile from the most sensitive ring of noise from Fresno Air Terminal, which we know that that's important. The requirements that staff has imposed will connect important street segments, which is, as you're learning in this particular area and others, is always of a concern. The street configuration is somewhat different. Again, it was worked out with Public Works, but it will install and construct a very needed tangent of roadway and sidewalks and other related improvements. We did hold a neighborhood outreach meeting very early on. 2 people attended, and of those 2 people, both of the people supported the project. We also conducted a traffic study. There were no adverse impacts that were associated that could not be mitigated. And of course, as staff has mentioned, they're asking us to install the traffic signal at Olive, and we will be happy to do that. We also went to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee and had probably an hour or so conversation with that committee. And that committee also unanimously supported us, as did the Airport Land Use Commission. The gentleman who wrote the letter or email in opposition to the project lives about 3,000 feet away from this property. We did have communication with him, extensive communication with our project that's, well, about a half a mile or 3/4 of a mile away. So we're sad that he didn't pick up the phone and call us, because we pride ourselves in being able to talk to people about issues. But just in general, one of the areas of concern that he's asking the city and the county to be involved in is the vacation of McKinley Avenue, just east of Armstrong. And that's something that the council took considerable time to consider. And the county was also weighed in on it, and they felt that that was inappropriate, because that McKinley tangent also carries traffic in accordance with your adopted circulation plan. Again, we appreciate staff support. We do not object to any of the conditions, and we ask that you approve the project in accordance with the staff recommendation, which would be consistent with the advisory committee, the neighborhood outreach committee, and the Airport Land Use Commission. So we thank you. Be happy to answer any questions if you have them of me.
Thank you, Mr. Pichel. Do any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Pichel at this time? Okay.
I do.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. Burchell, good afternoon. My question to you is this: what infrastructure work is being done to support the vehicle traffic from 180, from Highway 180?
Well, we're actually taking pieces of the roadway along Armstrong as in accordance with the city's directives. So as development occurs, we construct those tangents of roadway. All of the connections to the 180 interchange are not being constructed now, but we are essentially paying our fair share and constructing our fair share.
What is the fair share? Can you share that with me?
In terms of dollars, yeah, the city really determines that, again, based on consultation with the city, the routing of the project to various agencies, and the traffic study that we submitted to the city. Our traffic engineer made recommendations about the improvements, and we are going to construct those improvements consistent with the city recommendations. It's not related to traffic, but I would like to put this in perspective for you. This project will pay almost $1 million in park fees. Again, we are consistent with the policies and requirements that the city has identified. We're not objecting to them. and those have been identified as appropriate, and to use a legal term, a nexus has been made to these requirements, and we support our responsibility to construct and pay those related fees.
Are there any other questions from the commissioners at this time? So we'll go out to the public. I do want to say that normally in a regular meeting, we would have a bell that would let you know before your time's almost up, but due to this being a Zoom call, unfortunately, we're going to have to just mute you at the end of 3 minutes. So I apologize in advance if that happens to you, but it's how we've got to do it this time. And then since we don't, I see one hand raised, since we don't know from that hand who's in favor or opposition, I would just ask when you do get called on, Mr. Snyder is the only one with a hand raised at this time, that you give your name, your address, and let us know whether you're in favor or opposition to the project. So if we can have Mr. Snyder come on.
Good evening. My name is Timothy Snyder, 6287 East Clinton, and I'm not necessarily in favor or opposed. I was actually one of the people at the neighborhood meeting, and like the applicant said, I was in favor, but there was a caveat. I am concerned about the water. We have 200 and something homes being built to the west of us already. There's a school going in. The 15 acres to the west of us is also going to become homes, and now we're pulling them back. I voiced a concern at that meeting just regarding the cost of when being annexed, the cost of converting to
Conversion is always better.
and I was told that the cost that some friends of mine who have had to incur after being annexed, that wouldn't be an issue. Since then, I have talked to the engineer, and I was told that the permits would be covered. So my concern is, with all this stuff going around us, our well will run dry. And if I do convert to city, which I'm all for, I'm not opposed to new development or being annexed. My concern is the fees involved and how those fees are expected to be paid.
There is a mechanism for that. Maybe one of the staff members could explain that. Was that your only question, Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? I don't see any other hands up. Okay. Maybe the staff could address that. Would it be all right if we address that after the meeting, the staff with Mr. Snyder? Does that work?
Chair Bray, we'll tack it, Planning and Development. Yes, we'd be happy to meet with the member of the public. I do want to remind you, we do have the Department of Public Utilities staff available to answer questions at this time. And just briefly, upon annexation, there is no mandatory time period for connection to water services. However, if existing wells do run dry or are required to go deeper, then it's likely that they'll be required to be connected to the city at that time if our services are available. Sewer is required to be connected within 3 years. Again, if city services are within certain proximity, even if within the county, if septic systems fail, they may be required to connect to city services. So that's what we're looking at in timelines. No mandatory connection for water unless existing fails, 3-year time limit for sewer. And then we do have DPU staff available if there are further questions.
Yeah, so could someone at the Public Utilities connect with Mr. Snyder and after the meeting and let him know what those costs might look like?
Mr. Snyder, if you have our staff's contact information through the notice, please just reach out to Kelsey and we'll put you in touch with the appropriate individuals.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Kevin Gray with Public Utilities. I had some trouble with my mic. Can you guys hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, so I wanted to touch briefly with Will Sackett said in regards to the water resources. We have a surface water treatment plant adjacent to the planned development. We're relying over 50% of surface water to service the general plans in the area, in particular this planned development. So we don't have an issue with that. In regards to water connection, if your well does run dry, we do have loans that can help you with that. Right now, the biggest expense is the water capacity fee, and that's running around a little bit over $5,000 per parcel. But I can go over those fees in person, or we can talk on a later day. Kelsey has my information, and she can relay that to you.
Thank you, Kevin. Okay,
Thank
I
you.
don't see any other hands up at this time. So last call for that. I will now close the meeting to the public. So would any commissioners like to ask questions or comment on this?
Yeah, I would, I'd like to make a motion to approve staff's recommendations.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion to approve and a second. Can the secretary please do a roll call vote?
Absolutely, Chair Bray. I have the motion by Commissioner Hardy, seconded by Commissioner Vang. Commissioner Hardy,
Yeah.
Commissioner Kreiner,
Yes.
Commissioner Sodi Lane,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Vang,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Chair Bray.
Yes.
All right, 7-0.
Okay, so before we move on to the next matter, would anyone like to take a 5-minute break?
Yes.
All righty. So do we just walk away?
Yes.
Okay, 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Gavin, is there ways to mute everybody's mics?
Peter, say hi to Sunny. Say hi.
Hi, Peter. How cute.
Say hi to one of my dogs. Say hi, Sunny.
Hi.
She keeps coming and getting up on my lap.
También este cabrón se siente cute.
También este cabrón, ese güey.
Güey de la barba.
I just want to comment that I don't want to do it this way forever. I'm ready us to be back at the chambers.
I'll second that motion.
It's not a real motion.
Ah,
Yeah, it wasn't a motion, it was a
Emotion.
wish. It was a wish.
yes. I'll second that wish.
Yes.
I do not mind sitting 9 feet away from anybody. I'll sit on way on the other extreme in Somalia.
It is my opinion that with the size of the council chambers, we could easily do social distancing.
I agree.
So should we just rebel and next time we'll just go there and do it?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, all right.
We'll see what happens at City Hall tomorrow.
Huh? Yeah. Now, next meeting, we're just gonna show up.
Okay.
Yeah, we're just gonna show up, say, you know what, we're doing this now. We'll wear our masks, take them off just to identify ourselves, then we'll show up, we're doing the meeting here. So,
Please don't forget to bring your laptops.
pardon?
Don't forget to bring your laptops.
Why? Oh, yeah, because the public could sit 6 feet apart.
Of
And
course they can.
Anybody, and then once you get that many people in there, anybody else would have to do it on Zoom.
Yep, I agree.
So is Raj gonna report us to the police now?
I'm laughing out loud. Are we ready to reconvene? It's 8:02.
All righty then, let's reconvene. I just didn't see any more people coming in. So do we have everyone back? How do I tell?
Chair Bray, you have a quorum on the screen.
Yes,
they all
Brad
back?
Hardy.
Oh,
I'm back.
okay, and I see Commissioner Kreiner is there, so we're good. Okay, so now we're going to consider item D, which is ID 20-00610, consideration of plan amendment application number P 18-01089. So can we have our staff presentation, please?
Good evening, Chairperson and Commissioners. My name is Rob. I'm with the Planning and Development Department. Can everyone hear me just fine?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. So tonight's staff brings forth consideration of a plan amendment, pre-zone, tentative track map, and the related environmental assessment. The proposed track map is located on the southeast corner of the West Dakota Avenue alignment and North Grantland Avenue. It should be clear that the proposed track map is not to be included within the neighboring 1.02 acre neighboring property indicated as the orange square in this exhibit, though this neighboring property will be included as part of the boundary for the plan amendment and pre-zone. So again, that neighboring property, not part of the subdivision, but part of the pre-zone and plan amendment. And this is just a closer view. You can see the neighboring property as a single family home. The applicant has reached out to the property owner, but nor staff nor the applicant have received communication to date from this neighboring property owner regarding this application. And although application for an annexation is not included within this application submittal package due to submittal of a landowner petition, the applicant and LAFCO have agreed on the boundary for annexation, which you can see here, subject to approval of tonight's plan amendment pre-zone and track map. To make it clear, the yellow area is currently in the county's jurisdiction, whilst the blue area is in the city's jurisdiction. The subject property is within both the residential medium density and residential high density zone, general plan land use districts. The plan amendment will change these designations both from where they are now to residential medium low density, consistent with the proposed density of the track map. Following that, the pre-zone will also change the current rural residential county zone district to the city's RS4 residential single family medium low density zone district. The proposed track map consists of a total of 26.92 net acres comprised of 116 single-family residential lots at a density of 4.31 dwelling units per acre. And the average lot size will be 6,926 square feet, all of which consistent with the density and lot size requirements of the RS4 zone district. All future single-family development will be required to comply with the RS4 zone district development standards, including setbacks. There are open space components available to the subdivision with a 30-foot landscape easement along North Grantland Avenue, traveling north to south, 20-foot landscape easement along the West Dakota Avenue alignment, traveling east to west, a paseo connecting the subdivision to the West Dakota Avenue alignment at the northwest corner of the subdivision, and a 10,230 square foot open space area at the north central portion of the track map. You can see highlighted in the large green area there. All open space components are consistent with city standards and the open space requirements of the Fresno Municipal Code. Staff presented this project proposal to the Council District 1 Project Review Committee. The applicant provided an overview of the project, and the committee unanimously approved the project 3 votes to 0. I'd like to show this exhibit just to show how this subdivision is going to look with the existing surrounding development. You can see the not part of the map is that residential, that single family residence that's being surrounded by. Just leave that there for a few seconds to glance at. There are some traffic planning conditions and requirements that will affect nearby intersections of the subdivision, starting with the Ashland and Bryan intersection. It's the installation of a traffic signal with protected left turn phase, and that will be required to be completed prior to the building of 100 or the occupancy of 101 homes. And the second would be the installation of an always stop with school crosswalks and signage at West Gettysburg and North Bryan Avenue. Other applicable traffic fees will also have to be paid. With that, it's staff's recommendation to approve the plan amendment, pre-zone, vesting tentative track map, and associated environmental assessment. That concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Do any of the commissioners have questions? I do, Robert. I noticed on the map that there's that one parcel that's not part of this, but the roads run right into it. How's that going to work?
There won't be access from, well, the driveway will stay there as is until further development occurs on this property sometime in the future, whenever that may be.
So
that will be incorporated into this map.
And you said you got one letter. What was that letter?
No, there was, the applicant provided or sent a letter to the resident, that neighborhood property. We received no letter back, so they reached out to him.
Okay. Okay, so does anyone else have any questions for Robert? Okay, then we'll ask the applicant to present, please.
And that's Jeffrey Roberts. He should, he's in here. I don't know if he's going to raise his hand.
I don't think he has to raise his
No, I just brought him in for you.
Okay,
Thank
thank you.
Mr. Roberts? Okay, it looks like Mr. Roberts might be having trouble getting in.
Yeah, I've not seen him anymore.
Yeah, his name is no longer in the attendees, and it has been all along.
Well, you might want to give him a minute or so to try to come back. That's strange.
Yeah.
Gavin, this is Kelsey. I know Jeff Roberts also called in on a 559 area code. I don't know if maybe his computer died or something.
Do you know the last four of the phone number? Because I've got an 8300 and a 3770.
Only 559 is the 8300.
True. Let's see if that's him.
Okay.
Hello.
Like he's
Hello.
on mute. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, it shut off for a moment. Can you hear me now? This is Jeff Roberts.
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Okay. I apologize. I think it may have been on this end, but thank you, Madam Chairperson, members of the commission. This is Jeff Roberts. I'm speaking on behalf of the applicant, the Assemi Group, and our business address is 1396 West Herndon Avenue in the city of Fresno, Suite 110. I want to thank Robert Holt for the presentation this evening. I want to keep it very brief and just state that we do concur with the recommendation of staff with all the mitigation measures that have been included in the staff report and with all the conditions of approval from all the various departments that have submitted conditions. Our request is also consistent with the newly initiated West Area Specific Plan. I think you may recall, or I think this group knows about that. You considered it last May. And we have met with residents on an ongoing basis several years ago, and then we've had ongoing discussions ever since then. There's a new owner in that small parcel that we surround, and we reached out to them. We have not heard anything back. So we know of no opposition, and again, we do support the staff recommendation. And I hope you heard that. It's
We did.
okay.
Okay,
Because my screen is doing funny things here. So.
Do any of the commissioners have questions for Mr. Roberts at this time? Okay. So I'd like to invite the public, go out to the public. Are there any members? Doesn't look like I see any hands up. So it doesn't look like there's anybody wanting to speak at this time. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Okay. So we will close the hearing at this point to the public. And I'll ask the commissioners if they have any comments or questions.
I want to make a motion to approve the recommendations.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Can we have a second,
I'll
please?
second.
Okay,
Brad Hardy, second.
thank you. Can we do a roll call vote, please?
Absolutely, Chair Bray. I have the motion made to accept staff's recommendation by Commissioner Vang, seconded by Commissioner Hardy. Beginning roll call vote, Commissioner Hardy.
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Kreiner,
Yes.
Commissioner Sodilane,
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie,
Yes.
Commissioner Vang,
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz,
Yes.
Chair Bray.
Yes.
Okay, 7-0.
Okay, thank you. So our last one is we're going to consider item ID 20-00613, which is consideration of a conditional use permit, application number P19-05984. Can we have a staff presentation, please?
Yes, Philip Segrist from Planning and Development Department. I do have a presentation, and let me get that set up for you. Oh my gosh. Hey, good evening, Commissioners. Philip Segrist, Development Resource Management. This evening, you'll be considering conditional use permit application number P19-05984 and the related environmental finding as filed by Ken Bang on behalf of Sterling Hartle Development Incorporated. Subject application pertains to an existing 2,280 square foot convenience store and gas station, which is located on the southwest corner of North Cedar and East Nees Avenues. Fresno General Plan, land use map and official zoning map designate the subject property for community commercial planned land uses. You can see properties to the north and northeast are also planned and zoned for community commercial uses. Properties to the east are planned and zoned for single family, medium density residential uses. And properties to the south are planned and zoned for office uses. Here's an aerial image of the site and area. As you can see, the existing Johnny Quick convenience store is located within an existing neighborhood shopping center. The properties to the north and northeast have been developed with commercial shopping centers as well, but although they're a little larger in scale. The properties to the east have been developed with single family homes. Directly to the south, properties have been developed with a preschool and child care facility and offices, and properties to the west have been developed with a convalescent nursing home. There's this next image is a street view of the existing Johnny Quick as seen from North Cedar Avenue. Not that it's important, but the gas brand that they sell is Valero. Okay, the subject application, conditional use permit application P19-05984, requests to upgrade an existing type 20 alcohol license to a type 21 alcohol license for the existing Johnny Quick, located at 7995 North Cedar Avenue. As mentioned in the background section of the Planning Commission staff report, subject establishment has an existing type 20 alcohol license, which was issued by the state of California Department of Alcohol Beverage Control and was later grandfathered in under Master Alcohol Conditional Use Permit C-9486. While the establishment does have an existing type 20 alcohol license, section 152706 of the Fresno Municipal Code states that any existing establishment which requests to modify their alcohol license must obtain a new conditional use permit in compliance with the standards of the section, and that includes applicable location restrictions. According to Part E of that section, new establishments under 10,000 square feet are prohibited when they are near sensitive uses, near other establishments, within high crime areas, and within high concentration areas. The subject project, or the proposed project, is not in compliance with two of the location restrictions, as it's located approximately 118 feet from a sensitive use, which is Nancy Fuller Children's University, which is a preschool located just south of it. And the establishment is also located within 500 feet of two existing off-sale alcohol beverage establishments. One is a Rite Aid, which is just due north across the street from these, and that has an existing type 21 alcohol license. And the other is the Chevron, which is located on the catty corner, on the, I would say, the northeast corner, and that has a type 20. Therefore, based on the location restrictions, the proposed new alcohol CUP is prohibited. The Development Code does, however, provide exceptions to the aforementioned location restrictions, only if the review authority determines any of the following: that the proposed use would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, or increase the severity of law enforcement or public nuisance problems in the area. Or the sale of alcohol is incidental and appurtenant to a larger retail use and provides a more complete and convenient shopping experience. Or the outlet would act as a public convenience or necessity to an underserved portion of the community and enhance the vitality of an existing commercial area. The director was unable to make any of the exceptions from the location restrictions. In addition to the project not complying with the location restrictions for new establishments, there are conditions of zoning tied to the property that restrict permissible uses of or on the property, specifically the off-sale of alcohol. These conditions of zoning were approved by City Council under rezone application number R8187. The complete list of permitted uses is included in the staff report as Exhibit N. It's titled Exhibit A, Statement of Covenants Affecting Land Development. And that list includes uses that are permitted in the then C1 zone district, both by right and with the CUP. Alcohol sales were not included on the restricted list of permitted uses by right or with the CUP, and is therefore not a permitted use. And so given that the establishment does have an existing type 20 alcohol license is issued by the State of California Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control, and a conditional use permit under C-9486, the existing use of the property and alcohol sales is considered a legal non-conforming use. Lastly, in order to okay, there you go. Lastly, hold on one second. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I lost my place here. Lastly, in order to grant approval of a conditional use permit, the required findings under section 155306 of the Fresno Municipal Code must be made. And based upon analysis of the application, the director was unable to make the required findings and denied the request on February 21st, 2020. The director's decision to deny the request was appealed by the applicant on February 24th, 2020, and therefore the subject application is now being considered by the Planning Commission.
Does that conclude your report?
No, the Council
Oh,
District
okay.
6,
I'm sorry.
Council District 6 Committee, Project Review Committee reviewed and approved the project, recommended approval of the project on January 7th, 2020, with no additional recommendations. Notices of intent to take action were also mailed to surrounding property owners on February 11th, 2020, with no comments or letters of concern received. And notices for tonight's Planning Commission hearing were mailed to surrounding property owners on April 19th. To date, no comments have been received. Staff did receive a letter from the applicant yesterday afternoon indicating that they did reach out to the operator of Nancy Fuller's Children's University, which is the preschool just south of it. And they indicated that they weren't in opposition of the project. And that letter was provided to you today and is also included in the administrative record. But while staff does appreciate comments provided, the development code doesn't provide for exceptions for location restrictions and sensitive uses, regardless of whether consent may be provided by the operators of those sensitive uses. And based upon the analysis of the application is included in the staff report, staff concludes that the required findings made by the director to deny the special permit under section 155306 are appropriate. And therefore, staff recommends the Planning Commission deny conditional use permit application number P19-05984. If the Planning Commission decides to grant the request to upgrade to the type 21 alcohol license, the Planning Commission must find that there's substantial evidence in the record to determine any of the location exceptions apply, and find that there is substantial evidence in the record to make all conditional use permit findings and amend them to include alcohol, the sale of alcohol, and adopt the environmental finding which recommends a class 1 category of exemption be adopted. And that concludes.
Phil, just to reiterate, that has to be all of the conditions, all the findings have to be made, right?
That is correct. All the staff or the director were not able to make any of the findings. And those findings are included as Exhibit P of your staff report.
Hey.
Thank you.
So do any of the commissioners have questions or comments to the staff at this time?
Question for Philip.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's my understanding, and I could be wrong, but I believe Toledo's is going to be opening up in that Chevron shopping center. Is that accurate?
Yes, and that would be a restaurant, and the location restrictions for these off-sale establishments do not apply. So if Toledo's were to go in there and they were to request a conditional use permit for alcohol sales, it would be consumption on the premises and not off-sale like a retail.
Chevron. Okay. So we have two within 500 feet, right? We've got the Rite Aid and
yes,
the Chevron, and then
so
I'm pretty
two,
sure
the
Toledo's
Rite Aid,
is
the
going to get
Chevron,
there.
and then the preschool. It's not an establishment, but it's a sensitive use, which is just less than 150 feet away.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions at this time? Okay.
I have a question for you.
Yes.
Okay, so I know that with the property itself, it was pretty much grandfathered in, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, under the C9486.
So in order for them to go ahead and apply for that type 21, they have to surrender that type 20 first?
That is correct. They would have to, yes, they would, to my knowledge, yes, they would have to surrender that type 20.
Okay, thank you.
Would anybody, yeah.
Okay, I'd like to ask the applicant to present.
I think either George Beal or Ken Vang might be on the line.
Can you hear
I see
us?
George there.
You're both on the line, but yeah. Mr. Beal?
Madam Chairperson, members of the Planning Commission, I'm George Beal. And I built this original building back in 1987, about 33 years ago. I still own it. I'm asking the Planning Commission to upgrade my CUP to allow a type 21 license. It did get, it went before the council district committee and it was approved 3-2. There were no protests. We received a police review with some conditions and we agreed totally with those conditions. The Johnny Quick Food Store has operated with the type 20 for 33 years. And there's 2 other locations there like the Rite Aid and the Chevron. But with the upgrade of the type 20 to 21 from at the Johnny Quick, it still only has 3 licenses as there is now. The only change is one would change to a type 21. And so we're not increasing license counts in the area. We talked to the daycare center. They had no issues with it. We talked with the rest of the shopping center people. They have no issues with it. Under the convenience and necessity side of the business, right now there are no small formats that have a type 21. They're all in supermarkets or Rite Aids or Walgreens or that kind of thing. That area, and they're all a mile away. So our customers have asked us to see if we can get distilled liquors, and that's why we're here. We think the format works for us. We've been there for 33 years. We like to know what the Type 21 license offers us, and we ask for your support.
Okay, does anyone on the commission have questions for the applicant at this time?
The other thing is nobody appealed this. We did the mailers, we walked the neighborhoods, and nobody said, hey, we don't want you there. We don't want you to have a type 21.
Okay. So I do not see any hands up on the screen for public comment. So I'll call one more time for public comment. Okay, so still no hands up. So we'll close this to the public at this time. So do we have any questions or concerns or comments by the commissioners?
I do. May I?
Yes, of course.
Mr. Bill, I've been looking for the police recommendation form and I don't see one. Were the police from Northeast Fresno part of this recommendation?
I could probably answer that question. Their response to the request is probably included in the conditions of approval, which are on exhibit, or the draft conditions of approval, which are, I believe, the last exhibit, maybe R. They weren't in opposition. They didn't indicate that it was in a high crime area, and they provided conditions of approval should it be approved, and that included providing them with a improved security plan.
Are there any other questions?
Thank you.
Chair Bray, I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
I would like to say that for those that have been on the commission, it's important that we be consistent in our approach to all applicants. And I hope when we make a vote, we keep that in the back of our minds or in the front of our minds. Sorry.
Yeah. So just to clarify, I don't know if.
I had a question too.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry, Brad.
So to the applicant, I'm going through the file, you know, as commissioners, we need to have some findings. What are some of your findings? I didn't hear you speak on any, on why you're appealing the director's decision. I mean, I hear that the community's in support of it. I hear that the police, but I need some facts. Can you kind of steer us in the commission a little bit?
Well, the findings are the Johnny Quick gasoline alcohol sales is consistent with the general plan. That's findings A. Findings B is the proposed use is consistent with the general plan and any other applicable plan designed guideline by the city has adopted. The only, the design, location, size, and operating characteristics of the proposed activity is compatible with existing and reasonable foreseeable future of land uses in the city of Fresno. The site is physically suitable for the type, density, intensity of use being proposed, including access, emergency access, utilities, and services provided. And the only finding C, the proposed use will be substantially adverse to the public health, safety, general welfare, and community, will be detrimental to surrounding properties. We disagree with that. We've talked to the community. We've talked to our customers, and we think we're meeting the objective there because the daycare center people, they came in 10 years after we were there already. And we have a number of stores that there are daycare centers directly across the street from us. At Temperance and Highway 168, a daycare center moved in 2 years ago. At Spruce and Herndon, or Spruce and Holt, there's a daycare center on the corner directly across the street. They like that. As moms take kids to daycare, there's things that come up. They like to stop and pick up different things. So we think we fit the mode of meeting the things that people like. We also talked to the owners of the rest of the shopping center, and they had no issue with it. But the other thing is the necessity and convenience. Right now, only the big box guys have type 21 licenses north of Herndon. And that's just really not, why did we get excluded? Some of it is I've waited 33 years to do this, but that shouldn't exclude me from applying for a type 21. And all said and done, there'll still be 3 stores on those corners, 3 licenses. There'll always be the 3 licenses. They're not going to go away. 1 license from a 20 to a 21 is not going to affect the character of the neighborhood. Like I say, we've been there. We were there 33 years ago when there was nobody out there. There was a track on the southeast corner, and that was all that was out there. But,
Thanks. So you sell right now no alcohol, correct? Just so I understand.
He does.
We sell alcohol.
They do.
You have beer now, correct?
We sell beer and wine.
wine.
Yes.
Okay. And would you how much sales do you think that hard alcohol, the 21 licenses?
It's an ancillary item. The sales are probably not going to be huge or anything of that nature because it just fits into what we have to offer. We're a convenience store, and people that don't want to go to Rite Aid and get their drugs and things like that, and it's a 20-minute stop for them, those are the people we're going to get. The people that are on the way home and want to get a distilled item, a whiskey or whatever it may be.
Okay.
Thank you.
Like I said, we've been good neighbors for a long time out there.
Do we have any other questions or comments by the commissioners? Okay, so I have one. I'm reading out of our packet, and it says that the proposed CUP has to comply with the requirements of Fresno Municipal Code Section 152706, which is location restrictions. And according to that, it's prohibited if they are within one of the following areas. So if it's near sensitive uses. So it shall not be located within 500 feet of the following, and it includes a nursery school or daycare facility. And this is in 118 feet of the Nancy Fuller Children's University. Another one is that it cannot be within 500 feet of an existing establishment, and it is. Another one is that it's not located in an area of high crime, and it's not. And the last one is a high concentration of licenses, which it's not. But it says that it has to meet all of those. So number 1 and number 2, it does not meet. And so my inclination is not to give this CUP for the sales of the alcohol, because according to the municipal code, it doesn't meet the requirements. So does any commissioner have a comment, or could we get a motion?
I would second your motion.
I didn't make a motion.
Oh, sorry.
I will second it.
I agreed with your comments.
Okay. So
I'll make a motion. This is Commissioner McKenzie. I'll make a motion that we approve consideration that the project determination is exempt from CEQA, and that we uphold the actions of the Planning and Development Department and deny the applicant's appeal.
Okay. So we have a motion. Can I have a second?
Second.
I'll second.
You have 2 seconds. So can the secretary please take a roll call vote?
Absolutely. I have the motion made by Commissioner McKenzie to uphold staff's recommendation, but I didn't catch who made the second. Can I get one person for a second?
Commissioner Sody Lane did.
Commissioner Sody Lane?
They're looking for comments. You realize that, right?
Pardon?
There's still 2 people from the public with their hands up.
Oh, I didn't see those.
You already
Well,
turned
one
it.
is George Beal, who's the applicant.
I thought she closed that period.
Yeah.
I closed the public comment
She closed the public comment period.
They had their hands up before she closed the public comment period.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see those.
Sorry, I had walked away, but their hands were up.
Okay. All righty. So, Mr. Vang?
Yes, good evening, Planning Commission members. This is Ken Vang. I represent the applicant as well. I do want to say that we can't choose our neighbors. And in this case, Mr. Beal's property was developed as a gas station prior to the daycare coming in. In addition, prior to the other type 20s coming in. And if those projects were to come in at this time, those projects would not be in compliance, right? The daycare wouldn't be in compliance because they'd be within 180 feet of an existing alcohol license. The Rite Aid would not be in compliance because they're within 500 feet of an existing type 20 license, or the Chevron. So those other projects came after Mr. Beal's project. So we can't choose our neighbors. They're already there. We already have on the side of the school, the daycare that came in after the gas station was already there. They by default accepted the fact that they're closer than 180 feet to an existing gas station that sells alcohol. In addition to the other stores coming in, the Rite Aid and the Chevron, they all acknowledged that when they came in, there would be more than one license in this corner. So they all accepted the fact that there was going to be a higher count here. And what he has an existing type 20, which allows him to sell beer and alcohol, just not hard liquor. So the type 21 allows him to have the hard liquor as a complement incidentally to his current services that he's providing for the clients, for the customers. And like George says, the gas stations are convenient. Someone comes in, gets some gas, want to grab some stuff inside real quick. They're not the same type of shopper that's going to go into a Rite Aid and get drugs and medications and other stuff and then add on the other type of things. They're going to be in there for a longer time shopping than a general gas guy that's coming and gets some gas, grab some stuff and go home. So we just want to provide that additional services so they don't have to make a secondary trip to go to another store to pick up any other alcohol or hard liquor they want to get. They can have it all, buy it all from that location. Even if you keep in mind that even if you deny the type 21, which is an upgrade, not a total abolishment of his existing type 20. His existing type 20 will still be there. Even if you deny it, the existing type 20 will still be there. The condition of the daycare is still going to be too close. The condition of the Rite Aid is still going to be too close. The condition of Chevron is already going to be too close. So that is already existing. All we're doing is changing the type 20 to type 21. The character of the neighborhood, nothing changes. The number of licenses doesn't change. Nothing changes his ability to sell another product to his customers, which is the service that he's providing and he's providing. I don't know if any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Vang. So I see no more hands up for public comment. So I have a question of either Mr. Zach or Raj as far as the legality of us not recommending against what the municipal code says. What's the result of that? Because I'm reading the municipal code right here.
So there is the potential for the public to bring action for mandamus, i.e., conformance with the municipal code, which would invalidate the determination. Can you hear me?
I didn't hear the beginning of what you
Sorry,
said.
I was farther away from the speaker. So I'll just repeat. So there is the potential, if the commission does not vote in conformance with the municipal code, for an action to be brought, liability for the city for not following the municipal code, which may result in a mandamus action.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any other questions or comments from the commissioners? Okay, so we did have a motion. Did we have a second on that motion? We did. Okay, so can we call for a roll call vote, please?
Yes, so I have the motion by Commissioner McKenzie, seconded by Commissioner Sodi Lane to uphold staff's recommendation. Commissioner Hardy?
Yes.
Commissioner Kreiner?
Yes.
Commissioner Sodi Lane?
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie? Hi, Commissioner McKenzie. I was just calling roll call vote for you. So Commissioner McKenzie, what is your vote on this item?
I think maybe she somehow got disconnected.
It appears that Commissioner McKenzie is not connected to the audio.
Okay. Do I come back to her?
Yes.
The motion.
Okay. Commissioner Vang?
Yes.
Commissioner Diaz?
Yes.
Chair Bray?
Yes.
And Raj, it looks like Commissioner McKenzie wrote yes in the comments. Commissioner McKenzie, can you confirm that yes is for your vote?
in the comments? Yes, that is my vote. Okay, so Commissioner McKenzie is a yes. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a report by the secretary today?
No, nothing from me today.
Okay. Do we have any unscheduled communications? If you're a member of the public and you'd like to comment, please use the raise hand function on the Zoom, or if you're calling in, dial *9, and then you'll have 3 minutes for your comment. Okay, not seeing any. I'd like to thank the staff. This was a full meeting, and you guys did a great job in doing the presentations, and we appreciate it. So the meeting is adjourned, and it's 8:48.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.